Hello and welcome back to the Ourlads Depth Charts Show. I'm your host, Ryan McKee, and I am playing injured today. Tested positive for COVID this morning, but I am still going strong because football never stops, guys. I am joined by our Sultan of Scouts, David Syvertsen, joined by our Duke of Depth Charts, Tucker Moss, and the Prince of Punters, Cory Henke. How's it going, guys?
Great.
Better than you, Rye.
Yeah, sorry to hear
that.
Yeah.
Well, that's all right. That's all right. I am here. I am ready to go. We are here to talk football, and we've got week 2 preseason ready to preview. We're going to talk about some injuries that have come up. We're going to talk about some depth chart changes. We're also going to deep dive preview into the Lions and Chiefs preseason game, talk a little bit about the wide receiver rooms on both teams because they are a little bit up in the air. But Tucker, let's get started. What is the most important thing we need to, the most important story we need to pay attention to?
Matthew Judon news. Now, that's the big one.
That's the big one. Okay, let's go.
Not biased or anything either. Falcons finally got a good pass rusher, hopefully, coming off a biceps tear. But if he can play up to how he has been in the past, then they haven't had an elite level pass rusher in forever, since John Abraham 10 years ago. So it's going to be huge for their defense for sure. Yeah.
What does this mean to you, Dave?
This team is as all in as any team in the NFL. This is actually, happy birthday, Matthew Judon. Today is his 32nd birthday.
Oh,
today. So nice little gift from New England to Matthew Judon as he approaches his mid-30s, a year away. But this is a 2016 fifth-round pick that started off in Baltimore, and he took over a starting gig in 2017. And every season from 2017 until 2023, where he got hurt, on his respective team, he was number 1 or number 2 on the team in sacks. So this is kind of like a Cameron Jordan type in that every year in, year out, he really was the best defender on that team when it came to rushing the passer. And Atlanta went all in on Kirk Cousins, an aging quarterback coming off a torn Achilles. Rumor has it right now they just signed Justin Simmons to play safety. That's a report this afternoon. Hasn't been confirmed by all sources, but a few have confirmed that he's a 31-year-old all-pro safety. And Grady Jarrett, another big piece of that defensive puzzle, is on the wrong side of 30. So this team is putting all their chips into the middle of the table, despite being year 1 of a new coaching regime. A very interesting approach, but this NFC South is up for grabs. It is a bad division, maybe the worst in football. So why not do it this year?
Yeah, why not go all in? And Tucker, in your notes, you mentioned that the Falcons have just lost their 3rd-round rookie Braylon Trice for the season. Now they have Judon coming in. He's going to immediately slot in as the number 1 edge rusher. Presumably, Lorenzo Carter will also be the other starter. What are you thinking?
Yeah, they're probably going to rotate guys. I mean, the other edge rushers for Atlanta are just not like last year. Their 2 leading sack guys were Bud Dupree and Calais Campbell, and they're both neither on the team. Also, they're both very old. That tells you the state of the other players there. So it'll probably be either Lorenzo Carter or Arnold Ebiketie competing there for their spot. I know they like James Smith-Williams as well. But yeah, the big thing is going to be getting Judon next to Grady Jarrett and Onyemata in the interior there. I just can't wait to see. And then the Simmons news too is huge. If that's, I'm still waiting to make the move on the depth chart, but
okay. That'll be your hand is just hovering over your mouse, ready to make the change as soon as you can.
I've been refreshing Twitter like crazy, so
we're still waiting. We're still waiting. All right. Well, Tucker put Matthew Judon at the top of our list for the biggest news stories because he's a Falcons fan. But maybe one of another biggest story, Cory, you lost your quarterback.
Man, it's the off season from down under for the Vikings, isn't it? They just keep getting kicked and kicked and kicked. So if this team doesn't develop some sense of resiliency, no team has a chance at it, right? Because they have just been coming up. But with the loss of J.J. McCarthy, I think in some regards, putting an optimistic spin on it, I think it's going to be good for Sam Darnold, right? Like J.J. doesn't have to sit there and say, to J.J.
JJ's not waiting in the wings, so to speak, right? Like Sam Darnold can maybe have a little bit longer leash, and maybe that's what he needs.
Everybody can laugh at just Sam Darnold's jokes now. They don't need to say, oh, JJ, that's funny too, right? Justin Jefferson can come out, put all his chips in the basket, push it forward. But what really has me concerned is the old cliche, iron sharpens iron, right? And their secondary was pretty poor last year. I think PFF had them ranked below 80, right? And now you got Sam going against the second-rate defense. What's that going to do for their overall timing? I think they've got the odds stacked against them. Because I mean, don't you agree a little bit, Dave? Don't you think they need? You're kind of nodding your head. I see you thinking that as well. So, I don't think the Judon trade is as big as losing JJ, because who knows what's going to happen next year? Say Sam Darnold doesn't go out and do well. Now what do you do? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we were talking a little bit in our pre-show meeting. Dave, you were mentioning that you don't think that Sam Darnold might stay the starter all year even.
Yeah, I mean, here's a deep scout take if you want to go a little next level on this, because Darnold, one of the founding principles of the Kevin O'Connell scheme, which is a branch of the Shanahan scheme, is completion percentage. And take the layups, hit the free throws. Occasionally you go deep and try to hit that three-pointer. Nick Mullins, who started off under Shanahan and actually had a glimpse of a starting job back in 2020 when that team was falling apart with injuries and actually won a few games. He started 3 times last year for Minnesota. Minnesota was 0-3 in those starts. They did play against Detroit twice in those starts and Cincinnati once. But if you take a deeper look at how Nick Mullins played, if you get into any sort of advanced statistical metrics, EPA per pass attempt and yards per pass attempt, he was top 5 in the NFL over that span of those 3 starts. He has 20 career starts on his resume. His 88.1 QB rating would be 22nd in the league last year, about a little above league average. His 8 yards per attempt would have tied for 4th in the league with Lamar Jackson, ahead of Matthew Stafford, ahead of Dak Prescott. I am not putting Nick Mullins in that tier, but nobody's predicted Brock Purdy would ascend the way he did under Shanahan in that San Francisco scheme, and there are similarities between those two and how they play. So Nick Mullins is not going to be the savior of Minnesota, but I do want to put it out there. I do think we're going to see him starting at some point in 2024.
Interesting. Tucker, here is a trivia question for you. What is the nickname of Nick Mullins that George Kittle gave him?
I have no idea. Right.
Big Dick Nick. There you go. Big Dick Nick Mullins. So, Cory, you might have Big Dick Nick leading your team this year.
Hey, we need that energy.
It could be worse. It could be worse.
We need that energy. Step in there and let it rip. I'm going to take that. I just want to say George Kittle seems to be like the nicest teammate ever. He always raises people up. I heard him on a podcast the other day talking about Brock Purdy, and I just thought to myself, gosh, he seems like someone you want to go into it with. And for him to drop that on Nick Mullins, that's fantastic. Although I hope we don't get into that, because I don't see that transition that like everybody's excited. We're either losing or someone got hurt, and I don't like either of those two.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense. What is the did we hear anything on the possible Jordan Addison injury yesterday, Tucker?
I had just read briefly, but that it wasn't. They don't think it's serious. It was like an ankle injury. Did you read it all, Dave, about that?
I didn't see any updates.
Okay. I saw low ankle, which is better than high ankle, which is usually not as time consuming. My guess is he won't see the field for the rest of preseason. But I don't think there is a timetable on him yet.
All right. Well, that's good to know. Yeah, off season from hell for the Vikings. Jordan Addison also had a DUI that might be dealing with later in the year or maybe next season, depending on when the NFL gets around to releasing his suspension. Anything else on the Vikings before we move on?
That's
Corey?
it.
Nope.
All right, let's rock and roll through these next stories. Steelers have a deal in place to acquire Brandon Ayuk, but the 49ers are waiting on Ayuk to accept or deny a long-term contract offer before they trade him. What is going on with this right now, Dave?
So he rejected a deal to the Patriots, and because he's on a rookie contract, he can do that. He could also hold out without getting fined as well. So he's in a power position right here. At this point in a rookie contract, you have a lot of say and a lot of pull if you want to bounce out of town. He apparently, I have not confirmed this, did reject a deal to Cleveland as well. But that was more rumor. The New England has been confirmed that he didn't want to play there because of the shaky quarterback situation.
Yeah.
San Francisco is trying to sign him, but they're not going above the $30 million mark. And New England was ready to make him a $32 million per year mark, which had have made him tied for the third highest paid wide receiver in football, not including CeeDee Lamb. But San Francisco wants a player back in the deal. It doesn't look like Pittsburgh wants to give up George Pickens, which I can understand. He's a good wide receiver on a rookie contract, and getting Ayuk would be an upgrade over Pickens if you had to lose him. But if you consider the economics, it's not as big a win as you might initially perceive. So what I think that the holdup potentially is, this is just my speculation, is that there's going to be a third team involved, meaning San Fran will give up Ayuk to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh will give up picks, but San Francisco might want to use those picks and send them to another team to bring in a wide receiver, because the Shanahan scheme does not want to rely on two rookies, Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowling, to replace the impact of a Brandon Ayuk. I think they're going to want a veteran presence in there. So one name that pops up in my mind, scheme situation, is Terry McLaurin from Washington. Would they take a high pick from Pittsburgh and give him to San Francisco on a more economic deal than what Ayuk would have signed for?
Now, is that McLaurin? Is that just you speculating, or is that something you've heard?
100% speculation. I went through probably the top 20 wide receivers in the game that might be had for trade. Cortland Sutton was another name from Denver that came to mind.
And he was already holding out over the contract dispute with Denver. So
Devontae Adams, that rumor's been thrown around a couple of times. Getting hooked up with Shanahan. They have a relationship. So Amari Cooper was a part of that Cleveland discussion that was not confirmed. I mean, it does really sound like San Francisco borderline needs a player back. If they're going to give up Brandon Ayuk, the picks won't be enough for a legitimate right now win now team.
Yeah. Interesting. Is there any kind of probability or any kind of chance that the 49ers actually get a deal done with him and keep him?
That's what I keep circling back to.
I don't know. What do you think, Tucker?
It's just, to me, it's just a coin flip. I really don't,
Okay.
It's not like it's a completely irreparable relationship or something like that. Like we've seen before, where it's like, oh yeah, both sides are not gonna, like Aaron Rodgers. I feel like it's very possible that they get a deal done. It's really just up in the air right now. I haven't heard anything today of if there's any updates yet. But yeah, it's kind of crazy to see all these moves being made. Like Judon traded Justin Simmons, and then they're still waiting on the Ayuk news here. So
yeah, we might be waiting for longer. We had a video that we posted on our channel for the San Francisco Insider predicted that Ayuk will actually stay in San Francisco, but that prediction was made a little while ago, so we'll have to see if the circumstances have changed at all. Moving on to our next story, Jerry Jones said Thursday that he doesn't have urgency to get CeeDee Lamb's contract done. This kind of goes with the other story. Why is that not urgent, Tucker? Why is that not urgent? Get CeeDee Lamb's contract done.
we can only speculate what Jerry Jones has going in his mind, but there's certainly urgency. But it's similar to Ayuk, where like he kind of has the leverage in the situation because he's coming off the rookie contract. So like the fines can be waived by Jerry Jones, whereas like Hassan Reddick situation, those fines are going to happen regardless of what the team does. So I don't know what it is. I feel like it's going to happen any day now, though, personally. But it's just Jerry Jones.
Yeah,
he took those comments back a little bit. I saw him on an interview with NFL Network after practice last night, and he tried to say we certainly have urgency. It's just not, he tried to, I'm paraphrasing, but just not have panic. Jerry's trying to be that old cash money oil deal making Jerry. Just wants to take it.
The wild. What do they call him? The Wildcat.
He's the big cat. That's for sure.
Yeah,
kind of crazy sometimes, but we'll see. I don't think he meant it. Me personally, I don't think he was trying to throw shade on CD because he certainly seems to be backtracking and trying to get it.
Yeah,
kind of marginalized.
All right. I mean,
he wants to stay relevant. He wants to be at the top of the news, and every day that CD Lamb does not sign, they're going to be in the news. And I think he cares about that more than he does winning, to be honest with you. And just wait till we see Deion Sanders coaching Shedeur Sanders in Dallas next year.
He said something really interesting to me, to your point, Dave, where I think if the Cowboys are in the news, Jerry looks at it as that's what we want.
That's their one. Absolutely.
That's what they want. And because he said there was a social media backlash, right? And like if he wasn't aware that people are chatting, he wouldn't feed into that. Now, folks like us that putting out news and talking recognize that, hey, Jerry's listening. Let's talk more about it. So I think he's looking for the camera, and I don't think I'm unique in that fact.
Yeah. Well, not much more to talk about there, but yeah, definitely an interesting story to keep our eyes on. And moving back to the other side of the ball and back to Tucker's Falcons, Justin Simmons said to be finalizing a deal today, Tucker, the safety. What are you thinking about this for your Atlanta Falcons?
Yeah, I mean, that just kind of reinforces that they're going all in. We kind of mentioned it earlier. Having Simmons next to Jesse Bates would be automatically the best safety duo, and then have AJ Terrell there, have Judon, Grady Jarrett, Onyemata. I mean, that's a star-studded defense as long as they stay healthy. So, and then same with Kirk Cousins. So they're kind of going on these aging vets, and just have to not get injured.
Yeah. Okay, we have some injuries to update you on. We've got a Hollywood Brown out 5 to 6 weeks, they're saying, or 5 to 6 weeks into the season, right? Is that what we're hearing? Like week 5 or week 6, he might come back, or just 5 to 6 weeks total?
I thought it was the latter. I thought it was 5 to 6 weeks total, but I think
it's total. Mm-hmm.
That is good news for the Chiefs. We will be digging into the Chiefs wide receiver room a little more in our deep dive preview. Jahmyr Gibbs, seeing that he should be ready back by week 1. That is big for fantasy, since he is going in the first round of most drafts. Jordan Addison, we already covered. Still waiting for an update on him. Jonathan Brooks, we're seeing returns week 3 or week 4. The rookie running back for the Carolina Panthers will be very exciting for fantasy owners. So that'll be interesting to watch. And then Hawkinson, speaking of the Vikings offseason from hell, Corey, he's 3 to 7 regular season games for TJ Hawkinson.
He's on schedule. He's pretty optimistic. He's on schedule. They thought maybe week 5, week 6. So we'll see. If they're winning, I put him in there earlier. That's my prediction. If they start off as a dumpster fire, I think they'll probably take their time.
Interesting question. How many Pop Warner players will the Vikings be starting week 1?
Oh, God.
Who do they even have? They're going to be really maybe searching UFL players.
Kevin O'Connell, he could become the GOAT. He is a Belichick, was drafted up there in New England. So that next man out mentality's got to be, he's living it.
Well, it is interesting to think about Kevin Stefanski won Coach of the Year last year because of the Browns injuries were so piling up, and he had to use so many different quarterbacks, and he was able to right the ship. So maybe this is his time to shine. You take a page from Stefanski's book.
Yes. I'll be wearing my Kevin O'Connell KOC shirt next week. I'm rooting for you, Kevin. I'm rooting for you.
All right. So our big matchup that we wanted to preview for week 2 is the Lions versus the Chiefs. Very exciting matchup to watch, both because these teams, well, obviously the Chiefs are the defending champions, and the Lions were one of the most exciting offensive teams last year and in the playoffs. Let's start off previewing the Lions side of the ball. Let me pull up the depth chart and ask Dave where we want to go first when we're discussing the Lions depth chart.
Well, just watching them week 1 against the Giants, they got bullied all week at practice in New York, and then they got pushed around during the game. And with the way that team plays football and what Dan Campbell enforces, I'm curious to see how they bounce back, and do they go back to that physical brand that helped them win so many games last year. But the one guy that I'm looking at right now, it's time for Jameson Williams to stand up, because they locked in on Amon-Ra St. Brown. They have Jahmyr Gibbs, who's probably not going to play in this game, and Sam Laporta as nice accessory pieces to that passing game. But a real bona fide NFL passing attack that's going to help them get past San Francisco to the Super Bowl is they need a wide receiver to step up. They have the first round talent in Jameson Williams, but this is a guy that in 2 years, and I know he came off the knee injury year 1, he's got 7 drops and 4 touchdowns. He's caught just over 50% of the passes that have been thrown his way. And we knew he'd be a little raw, and we knew he'd get a late start because of the ACL injury that he suffered late in the year at Alabama. But it is now time. There are no more time for excuses. He's got to step up, and I want to see him catch the ball consistently, run the right routes, have a feel for where the defense is, and that's one thing I'll be looking for in this game.
Yeah. It is interesting because after St. Brown, it's a big question mark what the wide receiver room has or what the rotation is. They do have Khalif Raymond in there. They got Donovan Peoples-Jones from Cleveland, who did have some moments for Cleveland. I don't know. Tucker, what are you thinking?
Yeah, so the receiver room, I'm actually looking, Jameson Williams certainly really, really interesting to see if he's able to kind of emerge. But I'm looking at the number 3 spot because they have kind of an open competition going for like that X receiver spot. It was actually like their 7th round pick last year, Antoine Green. He had been taking a lot of the first team reps as like the X, competing with Donovan Peoples-Jones, but he was actually waived injured yesterday or 2 days ago because he suffered like a bad injury. So now they're actually a lot thinner there. I kind of want to see who they're going to have win that. Like Raymond is he's kind of like a lock to make the team just for special teams purposes, and he knows the offense. But I'm kind of looking at Donovan Peoples-Jones and Darius Fountain to see and Maurice Alexander, see if one of those guys can emerge as like a good outside threat for them.
Yeah, that is interesting. What about Tom Kennedy, Darius Fountain? Anything about these guys we need to know about?
Where are we looking for for the
just in the rest of the wide receiver room?
Those aren't names. I think this is actually a team that I've circled that once waivers come towards the end of training camp, I think this is going to be a team that's going to pick a talent off of another team that gets cut. Because I think this team needs to be at least 5 deep at receiver right now. And right now I see 4 deep. And I don't see any of these names. I mean, yes, anything can happen in preseason. And this is a franchise that does put a lot of weight into what actually happens during preseason games. But last week, I didn't see any talent. I watched that game 3 times, and I didn't see anything in that wide receiver room among those guys that stood out. So this is going to be a big waiver wire period addition for Detroit once those roster cuts start coming in.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another thing we need to watch in preseason is the battle for the number 2 QB, the backup QB. We've got Nate Sudfeld and Hendon Hooker, 2 great names. Come on, Hendon Hooker, Nate Sudfeld. Whoa, Tucker, who is it going to be?
I I've kind of gone back and forth on it a few times. I want to say it'll be Hooker, but just because it's kind of easier to, he's the younger guy, the guy that they invested in. So I probably lean that way, but you never know if Sudfeld it keeps impressing. I don't know, but
yeah. What do we need to look at on the defensive side of the ball, Dave, for the Lions?
Well, the secondary is where they just got absolutely annihilated last year. I mean, it was one of the worst 5 in football, which was a surprise that they were so good elsewhere that they still ended up where they would. But Terrion Arnold and Rakestraw, the 2 rookies that they used first and second round picks on, I believe are still injured. I think they got injured in practice over the past couple of weeks or last week. So I'm not sure they're going to be playing in this game. But they still did, the player that they traded for, Carlton Davis, they still have an ascending Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph in the middle of the field. But that cornerback room was an issue last year. And if these rookies don't stand up, I wish we could have seen them play in this game against this kind of offense. But I don't think they're going to be on the field. So it's going to come down to which one of these backups can stand up and really stand out.
Got it. All right. Anything else we need to discuss with the Lions?
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention was Emmanuel Mosley. I know he suffered like a relatively major injury. I don't know what it was, but if I highlight him red, that means that it's probably they're missing time. Like it's a significant enough to mean they're guaranteed to be missing some period of time in the regular season. So they just brought in Isang Bassi and Javelin Guidry to kind of be more guys in that cornerback room and the nickel spot there, because they're going to have Amik Robertson be their starter, and they're moving Brian Branch to mainly play safety now. So I'm interested to see kind of that battle there and their depth at receiver for sure.
Got it. And should we move on to the Chiefs?
Sure.
Let's do it. All right. We are going to share this tab, and I'm going to close out Dave's beautiful face. I don't have my ad blocker on, Cory, because I want to get as much money for our lads as possible. Okay. Every cent matters.
Team player.
All right. So we already talked about Hollywood Brown going down with injury. Their wide receiver room already having trouble. We don't know if Rashee Rice will be suspended for 6 games or so, I've heard thrown around. They've gotten McCole Hardman back. Justin Watson has stepped up at times. Sky Moore's kind of been a disappointment. So Rashee Rice, and then once we hear about that, you mentioned yesterday, Dave, in our pre-meeting call that you're all in on Xavier Worthy in fantasy if Rashee Rice gets that suspension coming down, because they have nobody else there.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to at least get thrown the ball. I mean, that's one thing I look for in fantasy, that, I just want targets, opportunities, and Sky Moore just has not turned into what many thought he could be after being a 2022 second round pick. But Justin Watson is an interesting name for people to take a gamble on early in the year, not because of him, but because of the offense, because of Andy Reid, because of Patrick Mahomes. And don't sleep on this fact. Last year, he was 6th in the NFL in yards per catch, 16.7 yards per catch among receivers that had it was over 20% of the PFF targets. So that's a number that I would pay attention to, that he could be their big play threat. And if you want to go ultra deep dive and take the chance at the end of your draft, maybe even the last pick of your draft, Justin Ross is a guy that for multiple years in a row has stood out in preseason action. If you remember back to his early days at Clemson, he was the truth. He was the next big thing. If after his freshman year, everyone said this kid is going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL, suffered multiple serious injuries, almost a career ender to his neck/spine. So, but now he's tearing it up. If you watch some of the highlight reels that KC puts out, he's making plays. And again, it's the quarterback that you want to invest in. So I would love to see both these guys get a lot of snaps and a few targets in this game against a secondary that we just said is very vulnerable. So if they can stand out, that might be a preview of things to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to mention Nico Remigio. He's also been a huge name at training camp. He was an undrafted guy from last year that missed the whole season on IR. but he's been a standout at training camp, and it would not be surprising to see Justin Ross and Nico Remigio make it over Sky Moore at this point.
Yeah. Interesting. Oh, we got a chat, guys. We got a live chat. My friend Brad Allred is watching. He says, "Missed that checkerboard, Scott. Rich fat baby McKee." Okay, I had checkerboard in my last, but I still have like the curtain. So
yeah, checkerboard curtain.
I still have that. Anyway, okay. So Kadarius Toney, though, are we watching him? Could he finally step up and do anything, Dave?
The most consistent thing about Kadarius Toney is that he's inconsistent. It's one of the most reliable traits that he has in his game since he's been a first-round pick back in 2020. So can he flash in a game like this, like he did in the Super Bowl? Absolutely. 2 years ago, yes, he can. Is it going to be something that really carries into the season on a week-to-week basis? It will absolutely not. So yes, I think that you might see a big play or a gadget play with Toney, but he's still catching the ball. He's still running around routes. He's still struggling with nagging injuries. I think at this point we know who Kadarius Toney is, and it's not someone this offense can truly depend on.
Dave, are you saying that based on this preseason or just on how he performed last year?
I mean, his entire career, to be honest with you, Cory.
The Giants.
When he was with the Giants, that was his story. I remember watching him at training camp in person. He couldn't catch the ball. His routes were awful. He got put into the doghouse multiple times from different coaching staffs and different front offices. And then Joe Schoen, as quickly as he could, shipped him out of town. So I think that we know who Kadarius Toney is on and off the field.
Yeah. Tucker, what else do we need to be watching as far as depth charts for the Chiefs and positioning?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm not sure if the starters are playing or not. I haven't read. I'd like to see they are.
The first half, actually.
I want to watch more of the left tackle. Like I mentioned last time, Kingsley Suamataia. He's been a beast so far. He's out of BYU. And then
that's how you know that Tucker is a true football fan. He's excited to watch the left tackle, who's a second-round pick from BYU. All right, Tucker.
They're also carrying a fullback. I want to see if he makes the team.
Again, really deep diving into this. Carson Steele, the fullback. Yeah.
Yeah, but otherwise, I'm interested in like the D-line depth because they have a lot of injuries there right now. Obviously, you can see with the red. And the interior especially is aging, and a lot of guys on 1-year deals. So I want to see if like someone like Neil Farrell or one of their undrafted guys like Fabian Lovett can make the team potentially.
Yeah. Awesome.
Fun fact, Fabian Lovett was, I think, my second highest graded player that went undrafted this past year. So that's a guy I would love to watch get some serious snaps in this game as well.
That's awesome. All right. Well, we got to get out of here because Dave has other things to do that are more important.
Not more important, but definitely.
Just kidding. Not more important than football. Nothing's more important than football here at Ourlads. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We will be back every Thursday at 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time with the Ourlads Depth Chart Show. We're not going anywhere. A lot of our shows have changed up. We are not having the fantasy show anymore. The gambling show has changed, but our Ourlads Depth Chart Show is tried and true. We'll be here every Thursday, 12 p.m. Pacific time. Also check out Dave's top 32 prospects video. I just edited Kelvin. What's his last name?
Kelvin Banks.
Kelvin Banks. Yeah. Really exciting to see an offensive tackle highlight. But still, it's doing well. But check out his top 32 prospects for the 2025 draft. No, it's never too early to start speculating. And Tucker is going to be updating all the depth charts as they happen. And Cory, what do you want to plug, Cory?
I just love that Dave's putting out these early reviews of players. I think to your point, Ryan, you never can get in too early and let it build because that information is just going to come like a tidal wave. And so come on with us all season long and catch those short clips of who's playing and who to watch.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks guys for joining me. We will see you next week.